On this week's podcast, we're talking to our special guest, Eddie Stewart, the recently retired CEO of Caddell, about the subject of leadership. Make sure you tune in and stay with us for the whole time because there's a lot of information you'll want to hear and a lot of things you'll learn in this week's podcast. Hi, and welcome to the Dogwood Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Harris, and in today's topic, we're going to be talking about lessons of leadership, and I have a special guest with me right now. I have Eddie Stewart, who is the recently retired CEO from Caddell. And recently, very, very recently, and still chairman of the board also, too. So,
correct.
So they still keep you around. You
still
get
entertainment value.
Entertainment value. That's awesome. I got to go to a meeting this past weekend, and I got to be around a lot of the Caddell people, and they definitely had you there entertaining, with some of the comments they were making here and there. So
yeah, you've seen some of the abuse I've put up with over the last 40 years.
Just 30 years now. So
40 years.
I was I thought it was 40.
It was 40
because I had that in my notes. I was going to bring up that you were there when this all began at Caddell, and so you got to work under the original founder from Caddell and with John Caddell, and from the very beginning, and got to see how he led the company and everything too. And that was literally what we're talking about today: is lessons in leadership. And that was going to be my first question: was how was it working for John Caddell, and what kind of things you learned from him?
Let me tell you what. Everything I learned about construction, everything I learned about being a leader, I learned from John Caddell. An incredible individual, probably the smartest man I've ever known, and I've said this in the past. He absolutely could take the most complex problems and break them down into the simplest of forms where everybody could understand them. And I think that's what helped Caddell Construction be so successful. A lot of contractors, we're risk takers at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. How we build our projects vary from one contractor to the other. John would seek out those projects that were the most complex, that would really scare off the other competition so that we may be one or two or three bidders, one of two or three bidders. And that just really kind of, was how Caddell got started, looking for those once-in-a-lifetime jobs. Again, John, smartest man I ever knew, an incredible leader, but diminutive in size. He was probably about 5 foot, maybe at his height.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
Very small in stature, but a giant. When he walked in the room, he commanded everybody's presence. But just an incredible leader, and somebody I was fortunate enough to work with out of his house there on Bell Road as the company started, and really was my mentor for my entire tenure at Caddell, even the first 30 years as the family-owned business, and then the last 10 or 11 years we've had as employee-owned.
Back then, 40 years ago, you had a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, and you're like, I'm going to follow this guy who just got laid off by Red Blunt, who is this giant in the construction industry, and I'm going to go work in his kitchen.
And, of course, my wife was pregnant with our third child. We have a total of 5 children, but she was pregnant with our third child at the time. And here we were leaving a perfectly good, large corporation to go to work for a guy working out of his kitchen, out of his house. And he had no benefits or anything. He said, we'll try to get some insurance before Robin delivers. So it was, everybody says, well, boy, that was a leap of faith. But I think back in the day, I was young, I was kind of naive, but I saw that John Caddell, what he had done at Blunt, and I said, hey, if he could do it there, he can do it anywhere. Because John was really he was the brains behind Blunt Brothers Construction, Blunt International.
Right.
So it was, everybody thinks it's something heroic I did, but really it wasn't. It was just, I guess, being young and naive. And
it worked out well for you, though.
It did work out well, yes, I got to say that.
Well, I was even thinking about when you did that, just, your role and how you grew in the company, too. Because, like you said, you were the young guy coming in, and you're taking this big risk of a young family, and your role changed and grew with the company also, too. Yeah,
remember, the company was just starting out. We had one job when I got there that they had bid. John and Joy started it. His son Kirby was with him. His wife Robin was there. And then Walter Nanny was one of the early guys from Blunt who got laid off from Blunt after John got laid off.
Oh, wow.
So it was just a core group there. And here was this young estimator that came in. But as we grew, as the company grew, we as individuals kind of grew too. You had the difference in generations between John Caddell and Walter Nanny, and then you had myself and Kirby Caddell. And there was maybe 25, 30 years, something like that between us. So it was neat because we really did everything. We learned every piece of the business. We weren't just estimators. We were, project managers and operators and stuff like that, had to kind of pretty much do just about everything there is in the company. So in that respect, it was a great experience because it exposed me to things I wouldn't necessarily be exposed to if I was in having been at Blunt where everybody was pretty much specialized.
Do you remember when you first got an employee working for you, and like you were said, oh, you're in charge of this, and this is your person working for? Do you remember that?
Well, the early employees we got, we kind of said, here's what you're signing on to. This isn't my job.
Yeah.
It's everybody's job. So we had some really sharp individuals who came to work for us at the time, and we were able to all grow together. And then as we got bigger, of course, we had to kind of delve into more specialized stuff, keeping the field operations separate from the estimating and the project development.
I'm sure there was a lot of uncertainty during that time too when you're starting this new company. What kept you motivated during that time?
5 kids.
5 kids.
A wife that wasn't working outside the home.
Yeah.
It was, we saw the finances of the company and we knew them, and it was all about getting work. And the business is still that way, Brian. It's not in construction. You're only as good as your last job.
Yeah.
And you've got to get work to make money. All the bids you submit that you don't get, great experience, but at the end of the day, none of it pays the bills. So we were motivated by survival skills, the need to get work to be successful in order to grow.
And not going into too much detail, but I learned a lot of that too in this meeting that we had this past weekend was looking ahead to the future and just seeing you've got to have that in mind in everything you're doing. And so I guess that started from the very beginning, I would imagine. So that's something that John started 40 years ago, and you were able to continue on as yourself when you became CEO, 12 years ago, I think it was?
Right.
Yeah, and so that's just part of being in construction is you always have to be looking ahead and knowing those things. And so how do you keep your people motivated there during your time or even before you were CEO? How'd you keep that staff motivated to stay on track with that and always know that, okay, you can't be happy just in winning this. We've got to look 3, 4, 5 years ahead and know that we've got projects coming up so we can keep this momentum. And as they kept saying, feed the beast,
I go back to John Caddell, and let me just say, Brian, it really was a seamless transition through different presidents and CEOs. John Caddell started the company. He was the president, CEO, chairman of the board. He was everything. When his son Kirby came on board, he was still, while he took on the roles of president and COO and CEO, John was still involved. Mm-hmm. Even when I became president, COO, and then CEO, John was still involved. John's kind of the common motivator that we all had, that he was always a pusher. He was never happy with whatever level we had gotten. It was always, we got to go get some more work, got to get more work. Every January, we start all over again. Whatever we picked up last year is fine and good, but come January 1st, we're back to 0 in new work awarded. And it was just John Caddell's leadership during that time that we all adapted to and adopted in our philosophy and the way we handled the company, and always pushing for more, pushing to get bigger. We never said when we get to be $100 million or $200 or $1 billion company, we're done. We are always pushing for more. And that's, I think, important when you're looking at a construction company in particular, unless you just want to get to a certain size and then call it quits. And the problem with that is you'll die on the vine.
As I say, you just start going backwards when that happens.
So it's kind of like Ricky Bobby, you got to go fast, and if you ain't first, you're last.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the philosophy in bidding. I came up through the estimating side at Blunt, came up through the estimating side at Caddell. I really like that better than the project management side because you see so many different projects, but that, I guess, competitiveness about pursuing new work, getting new work, and it just kind of feeds on itself.
During your time as CEO, was there ever a point, and this is kind of doing a 180 or 120, whatever you want to say, kind of turning, was there a point where there's times where, say, someone was critical of you or critical of decisions that were being made, and then how would you deal with something like that?
Well, everybody has a better idea of what you ought to be doing until you put them in charge of something.
And then all of a sudden, 2020, right?
Yeah, they find out it wasn't as, maybe it wasn't such a dumb decisions you've been making all along anyway. You've got the doubters, but we've been really very fortunate at Caddell to have good people like we've had. Mm-hmm. And everybody comes on board. They kind of, buy into the Caddell way so that they're committed. We're all trying to do the same thing. We're all committed to the same cause. The
Caddell way is a big piece too. You hear that over and over again throughout Caddell, and like you hear about it outside of Caddell also too. Like it's a big thing. So like how were you able to take the things that are in the Caddell way and get people to where they're bought in like they are?
The Caddell way, what you see now and what you read as the Caddell way, didn't start out that way. John Caddell, when he started the company, didn't say, all right, this is the Caddell way. These are the tenets that we're going to follow as our business. It was really how we did business. And I guess it was 25, 30 years into the company before we decided, hey, as new employees would come on, we say, well, this is what you need to know. This is how we do business. This is who we are. And finally we said, hey, we need to memorialize this. We need to document this in some way so that it's something we can share, and that every new employee comes on, they see what the Caddell way is and strive to be part of all those tenets that are out there.
I was super impressed by people's ability to recite it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just a real quick one phrase thing. There's 8 tenets to the Caddell way.
Yeah, and it's like everything. You can make it rote where, and run off those things. But the trick is, and Matt Caddell did a really good job last year of emphasizing the Caddell way by taking each of the tenets and elaborating on those and saying, what does that mean? And getting all our people together to help them understand what these tenets of the Caddell way are. And even to get as small groups after we had put out the message each month, and let them talk about what that means to them in their job, whether it's in Montgomery or whether it's in Jacksonville or Phoenix or whatever office they're in. How does that Caddell way apply to what I do and where I am?
Yeah. You mentioned Mac, and so you had the very unique ability to be able to almost pick your successor. I mean, you didn't pick him, of course. The board has to approve it, which you're a part of.
Right.
But you got to mentor Mac in a lot of ways, and you've seen him grow through the company. He does have the last name Caddell, but the company's owned by the employees,
right?
And so the employees could choose anyone they wanted to be CEO, basically the people that were, or the owners group of the company. But you were able to be a part of that and see him grow. What was the thing that you're like, okay, this is the guy? I mean, was there a point where you're watching Matt grow and you're like, this is the guy that's going to succeed me?
I think early on I saw something in Matt that I didn't see in anybody else, and the fact that his last name happened to be Caddell was just an added bonus.
Yeah.
Mac is a very sharp individual, has a great construction mind. He's a hard worker. I mean, he exhibits everything in the Caddell way. But aside from that, just watching him come up through the ranks, he was more in the operation side. I was in estimating. So I didn't work with him one-on-one, but I guess about 15 years ago, really started paying attention to, a lot of us were getting older and we were trying to pick our successors. And Mac's name kept coming up to the top, not just by me, but by Warren Barrow, Monty McKinney, other past Caddell employees who worked with him on a regular basis. And I got to see him exhibit those qualities a little bit closer as time went on.
Would you say even having those guys from the outside, or even their previous employees, or even other people that you trust, that's a lot of being a good leader, is listening to those people too and hearing their feedback, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. John Caddell, I learned everything I knew about, or I ever practiced about leadership from John. First and foremost, John was always about surround yourself with good people. And that's still key. If you don't have good people around you, you're not going to succeed. But the other thing John would say is don't micromanage them. Let them do what you hired them to do.
And that's hard sometimes.
It is hard. And it's hard to watch somebody fail. And sometimes you have to let them make mistakes and fail, because that's going to be a better lesson than if I jumped in and told them, no, don't do that. We've tried that 20 million times before. So, that surround yourself with good people and then let them do their job was key, and kind of how all of us at Caddell were able to progress in the company.
Well, I've noticed too, people at Caddell seem like they actually like each other. I mean, like just watching, how people interact with each other. There's differences between people who like are friends at work versus like I had my friend over, and because he came into town, he spent the night at our house and we had fun and stayed up to 2:00 in the morning just reminiscing, and like there's a lot of that going on, and just hearing those kind of stories like that's beyond just work at that point. It starts bleeding into your family, and that's a culture, and that's not easy to do either, because there's a lot of companies that try to do things like that, but that has to be instilled from the top, even from John, and then carried on by you as CEO also too.
Well, the other thing, John, like I say, other than surround yourself with good people and let them do their job, was take care of your people, and he really did exhibit that in just about everything he did. There were times when there were employees that had personal issues that John and Joyce would step in to help, and that's kind of carried on through the years. When you go back and talk about people look like they like each other, I think they do for the most part.
Yeah. But there's always going to be things that happen.
We used to go through all these surveys with FMI and, trying to get our, what is our culture and that kind of stuff. When you bring these outsiders in, they tell you what you already know. But when they surveyed our employees, they all said, yeah, Caddell feels like family. It feels like family. Now, family can be good. Family can be bad.
Family still fight sometimes. And I have people that we don't talk to in our family.
We all do.
Right. As the bigger as you get, the harder it is. But also that makes it more intentional when you are doing these things from the top down too. Yeah. So this is a big question, and we're getting close to the end, so you won't have to answer too many more. This is how do you think people at Caddell are going to remember your time as CEO? Like, what's going to be the thing that they think back and go, okay, this is what Eddie did when he was here?
Boy, you really are throwing one at
me right
now.
That's a hard one. Yeah.
Well, you were at our member meeting the other day, and you heard all the wisecracks I got. Oh, yeah. So I don't know, maybe I'm the laughing point or the humorous one from all the ages.
You took it very well, though. And so, like, that's the thing. Like, you like picking on the people you love.
Yeah.
And that's why I talk about that here all the time. The guys I pick on are the ones that I love the most, because I feel the freedom, because I know them well, and something that you say that it's going to roll over well. So as it seems like everyone knows you well. I mean, 40 years of the company, that's not normal anymore.
Yeah. Well, and I hate that, Brian. I really do, because I only worked really at Caddell. Well, with my time at Blunt, it was a lot of the people at Caddell. So I've only been one place for the last 45 years and kind of been around the same people. But I would hope that people would remember me as a kind, fun guy to be around. I hope they think I was a great leader. I don't know. Keeping us on track, keeping us focused on what we're supposed to be focused on, which is, find work, get work, and execute the work flawlessly. That's what makes us money. That's what makes our reputation.
Well, I don't know if you remember this, but the first time I met you, it made an impression on me. I was in the lunch area, and I think we were on a tour of Genoa, and you came through there, and we're talking to Jamie, and I was like, "There's the CEO of the company. He's just he's out there hanging out and talking to everyone else," and I was like, this guy's a normal guy, he's not pretentious or anything else like that. And this is a very common thing when people get put into a position of power, they can like change them. And I didn't see that from you.
Humility, I think, is probably the best characteristic any leader can have, because we don't see that a lot in our elected officials today, and a lot of leaders. It's not about us. I mean, anybody, in my opinion, could have run Caddell. Anybody could have done what I've done. I'm not smarter. I'm not better looking. I'm not taller. I'm not, not a lot of things. I was blessed to be put in that position by John Caddell, and that's really how all this came into being. And I'm not, again, I don't think enough of myself to think that I had anything special to do with it. Again, I truly believe God puts you in places where He wants you to be. And when you are obedient to Him and do where He puts you and do your best, that's all you can ask.
Well, faith is also a big deal for you too.
Absolutely.
And this is going away from our leadership, but that's how you lead your family. It's how I think it's a big piece of what led you and how you led Caddell even. Because I get to see you, I get the benefit of seeing you every Sunday now.
That's what retired people do, is they greet people as they come in church.
I have a feeling you've been doing it longer than that.
So. A little bit.
Yeah, but once I met you at Caddell and realized, okay, that's who that is. I'd already had met you many times before that and never even knew that you were the CEO of Caddell or anything like that. You were just the guy that was greeting us and always happy and like welcoming and everything at church. And so it was, again, added to that first impression. And to me, I saw that with me being the CEO of our company here, it was eye-opening for me. I was like, I need to emulate those type of things and how I interact with people. Because we're a much smaller company at Dogwood than you are, but
it doesn't matter, Brian.
It doesn't matter, and we have aspirations. It's like you said. When people ask me, they're like, "How big do y'all want to go? How many employees do you want to go?" And I was like, I have no clue.
Well, now you sound like John Caddell. He never knew. He never wanted to put a limit on where we were going to go or what we're going to do.
Why would I ever limit it?
Yeah,
it's like maybe God has bigger things than even I can imagine for
Absolutely.
Dogwood. And so I'm just going to ride this, and we're going to keep working our tails off. We're going to make clients happy. We talk about building relationships at Dogwood as being a big thing of what we do, and that we definitely we are here to make money. There's no denying that. Caddell is there to make money. All the clients we work with, surprisingly, are also there to make money, and so we're working with them to help them do that. And so, but that's not our number one emphasis. Our number one emphasis is doing right by the client, and then the money follows. A lot of times is one of the things we've learned also too.
That reputation is critical, and I've preached this since the beginning. Mm-hmm. We're only as good as the last job we did. We're only as good as we did for that last owner, because you can do 10 great jobs for a particular owner, and then if you drop the ball on one, that's the one they're going to remember, and that's the one that could keep you from getting repeat business.
Well, on that note, we're going to end with that. I think that's a great place to stop. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, if you like what you're hearing here, you can head over to our website at dogwoodmediasolutions.com. You can check out all of our content there and also listen to other podcast episodes you might have missed. If you're looking to connect with us at Dogwood, visit our website again at dogwoodmediasolutions.com. It's the best place to do that. You can also contact us directly through the site and through all of our social media accounts that are linked there as well. If you haven't already, definitely please go over and subscribe to our podcast at dogwoodmediasolutions.com/podcast. There's a link there for this week's podcast, along with any other podcast we have. And there's also links there where you can go in and subscribe. And also, when you subscribe, leave a review. We'd love to hear what you think about the content we're producing here at Dogwood. Well, thanks for tuning in to the Dogwood Podcast. And thank you again to my guest, Eddie Stewart, for joining me.
Thank you, Brian.
I've really enjoyed this conversation. So until next time, happy marketing.